guys, welcome back to the Brightside. Macy here, the Brights, and today we're going to be talking about some end of the year bookish stats. So this is one of my favorite videos to do every year. This is going to be me compiling some bookish stats that happened over 2023 for my personal reading journey. We're going to go over my year in books on Goodreads and then just some other stats that I have kind of compiled together. Happy New Year's Eve, by the way. I'm filming this video the night before, but it should be up on New Year's Eve. I'm going to be getting another video up in a couple of hours because I got a little bit behind with my filming. Stay tuned for my Bookish awards show, which is going to just have some like fun, silly awards like favorite fantasy of the year, best couple, different things like that. This is going to be a little bit more like nerdy and technical, so we're just going to jump right in. I normally do like all of the Goodreads stats first and then my regular stats, but they're kind of all mixed together because I wrote them down this year. So we're just going to go over how I have them written down. This is kind of more of a chill, casual video. I'm actually sitting down with you today. I have my laptop here. All of the books I talk about, I'm going to put images up for because I'm still backwards, so I can't go run around and grab everything very easily. So we're just going to use images, have like a little cozy time together. So I read a total of 228 books this year. Now, for those of you that are new, I do a ton of audiobook reading. We'll go over those stats in a second. I read graphic novels. I read a lot of short novels and things as well. So this stat is not exactly what it seems. We've got a bunch of middle grade and YA, even a couple kids books. While it's very exciting that it's such a large number, I always take these things with a grain of salt. So out of those 228, 172 books were audiobook. I work part-time and I work mostly from home, and so I'm able to do a ton of audiobooks. I also listen while I clean, while I drive, pretty much all the time. I listen at a faster pace as well, so that's how I'm able to get through so many. Plus, a lot of these were like short 2 to 4 hour audiobooks. Not all of them, but a lot of them, so that's why the number is so high. Always keep in mind when you're comparing your reading year to other people that you have no idea what's actually happening behind the scenes. You don't know how different their lifestyle is. You don't know what pace they're reading at. You don't know what their normal everyday routine looks like. A few years ago, 172 books on audio would have seemed absolutely insane to me, and now it's just kind of like my norm, and I'm not even listening to audiobooks like 24/7. I just have some tips and tricks to do this. I'm hoping to have like a how to read more books video coming your way if that's something that you're interested in. Obviously, reading even one book a year is fantastic. I know so many people that don't even do that. So reading or listening to even one book is amazing, but it's always fun to kind of set some goals and push ourselves if we want to. So I had 172 audiobooks, 55 were physical books. This was actually higher than I expected it to be, but I want to say half, if not more, of these physical books were graphic novels or very short novels. I did not physically read very much this year, like at all, which is always something that I kind of want to work on, because while I love audiobooking and multitasking and being able to consume a ton of content and get recommendations for you guys and all of that stuff, and the narrators are so amazing on the audiobooks, physically reading is like a totally different experience because I have to sit down and only do that. So it kind of forces you to relax, and I really want to work on this more for 2024. I have not set any goals for 2024, which I'll talk about in an upcoming video, but kind of like a loose back of my mind goal is to just physically read more. It can really help calm your brain. It also is good to do like right before bed. It kind of puts you in a good like state to go to sleep. I read somewhere that reading like 10 minutes before bed will cause you to read like 40% more throughout the year overall, because most people, if you set that goal, will go over it, and also just kind of puts you in a nice brain space rather than being on your phone. So technically this is a lower number than what I would like it to be, but hey, like I said, any amount's good. And then I read 4 ebooks, which can also be considered physical books, but I did them either on my phone or on the new little tablet that my husband gave me. He gave me his old one so I could use it for ebooks. There's a handful of books I can only get on ebook. I really prefer to physically read or do audiobooks, but occasionally we get an ebook in, so I was proud of that. So my total pages read is 69,078, and this is super interesting. I wish the Goodreads gave you a chance to mark things as audiobooks, because it would be so interesting to see how many minutes I read and how many pages I actually physically read versus having it all together, because I did not physically read this many pages. I listened to most of them. This was interesting because I think last year was like 62,000 pages and I had like 30 or 40 less books. So that just shows you how many short books that I read this year, because it only went up 8,000 pages reading like 40 more books, but I just read so many short things, so that's always kind of interesting. My most shelved book, which means like the most popular book on Goodreads that people have put on their like to read or read lists, was The Girl on the Train. It has over 4 million people have shelved it in some way. I did not enjoy it. And my least shelved was The Never Girls Mystery at the Mermaid Lagoon, which was just a cute little kids graphic novel that I read for Mermaid Marathon, My Mermaid Readathon, and only 70 people have shelved this. The highest rated book that I read on Goodreads was Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gielig. I super enjoyed the first book in this duology, and I didn't totally love the second one, unfortunately, like a lot of other people did. The first book that I finished this year was Five Total Strangers. This is a winter thriller, and I really enjoyed it, and the more I've read thrillers, the more I kind of want to up this rating. I think I gave it 3 stars, but it really was probably closer to a 4 because I really enjoyed it. Set on Christmas time, it was like a YA winter thriller about people trying to get home to see their family and a bunch of strangers in a car. It was great. And the final book I read for the year was All I Want for Christmas. This was just a super cheesy YA Christmassy rom-com, and it was fine. So the longest physical book that I read was Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I believe this had like 480 pages. I did not hit the 500 page physically reading this year, but I loved this book. One of my favorites, second in a duology. Both of these were in my top 10, tied for first place. Can't recommend enough. It's like a villainous backstory, dark academia, sci-fi vibes. So good. The longest audiobook I read was Court of Wings and Ruin. This audiobook came in at 25 hours. So very long audiobook. I did enjoy it. I finally finished up this series. I was very proud of myself. Shortest physical book that I read was The Brain is Kind of a Big Deal. This was a kid's book. When I initially requested it from the library, I thought it was going to be more of like a comic book graphic novel because that's what the other books are. This is the Heart and Brain series. It's a comic book that I really enjoy, and I didn't realize that he had a kid's book. So this was a kid's book. I think it was like less than 40 pages or something. It was very cute. The shortest audiobook I listened to was The Adventures of the Christmas Pudding by Agatha Christie. This is a very short little Christmas novella audiobook that I really loved. This is part of the Hercule Poirot murder mystery series, and this was like a little Christmas mystery. It was a 44-minute audiobook, so it took me less than half an hour to listen to. I really enjoyed it. It had a full cast. It had sound effects. It was so good. I loved it so much. Okay, so I had 9 DNFs this year, which is really high, but I also read a lot, so I feel like it kind of balances itself out. Some of the books I DNF'd were Nick and Noelle's Christmas Playlist. This was kind of a surprise to me, but it was a lot smuttier than I expected, and overall I just did not really like the writing style. The Pisces, which is an adult feminist mermaid book, and I knew that it was going to be controversial and something that I might not enjoy, but I try to kind of jump into almost any mermaid book I can find. This was horrendous. Our main character was so unlikable. Scenes and things I still have floating through my head that I do not need in there. It was just a disaster. I didn't even get to the mermaid part before I DNF'd it. I think I got a third of the way through. I hated it so much. So those are a couple that I DNF'd. I had 3 1-stars. I have very few 1-stars every year because for me, a 1-star, it means that I absolutely hate the book pretty much, or despise it, or strongly dislike it, or something happens at the end that like ruins the entire book for me, and even then sometimes I'll just give it a 2-star. I rarely have this happen, so I hardly ever have any 1-stars, but this year I did have 3. One was The Pisces. I normally do not rate books that I DNF, but I got far enough into this and I just know that that's how I would feel about the entirety, so I did give it 1 star. Trapped by Michael Northrop. This was like a middle grade survival wintry mystery. It was probably more of a 2-star, but I just disliked the characters, the way that the teenage boys talked about the girls, just the overall writing was not that great, so that was a 1-star for me. And then Snow White, some kind of Snow White graphic novel by Neil Gaiman. This was highly upsetting. First of all, this was an adult retelling of Snow White, and Snow White is a kind of like a vampire, which I thought was really cool, but it was very grotesque, very sexual in like a disturbing way, and just overall kind of messed up, and I hated it. So 1 star. I had 11 2-stars, which was pretty high for me. A couple on this list. For me, 2 stars means that I really didn't like it at all, but it didn't necessarily incite any emotions of like anger or disgust. So we had things like The Girl on the Train, Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney, and Darling Rose Gold. I just really didn't enjoy almost anything about these books. Those are the couple that come to mind. Then I had 83 stars. I'm not going to list any here because this was close to the majority of the books I read. 3-star for me means that it was fine. I enjoyed it. I might still recommend it, but it didn't like step it up to where I'm really going to be like pushing people to read it and talking about it a lot. I had 104 stars, which was really awesome because this exceeded my 3 stars, which is kind of unusual when you read a lot. And then I had 32 5 stars. And while this sounds high, considering that a few years ago I had 3 5 stars, for one, I read 228 books, so 32 is not that many. A few of these were rereads. I want to say at least 5 of them maybe were rereads, and then a handful were also graphic novels. I really think that I only had like 10 to 12 actual 5 stars. I'm a little bit pickier with my 5 stars. I want them to like bring out some kind of emotion of excitement or sadness or warm fuzzy feelings in me, so I don't give out 5 stars quite as often as I do like 4 and 3. I talk about pretty much all the 5 stars that I gave in my top 10 of the year video, which came out a couple days ago, so I'll link that down below in case you missed it and want to check it out. I read 21 new releases this year, which I thought was really high. My goal every year is to read like 1 per month, even if I read like more in 1 month over the other, but I got to 21 this year. There were so many that I was invested in, and a few of them made my top books of the year, like Foxglove, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, Grace of the Wild Things. So many were really, really good. So I was very happy with this amount that I got to. Okay, so my most read author, and this is going to be the same for the narrator. So this year I had a really big push to finish up some series. I think I started the year with 27 to 30 unfinished series, and I was really trying not to start too many new ones and to kind of get this list down. I did pretty good. I didn't fully hit my goal, but I did so good not starting too many new ones and finishing so many, which we'll talk about in a second, that I kind of just counted it as like a goal achieved. So this year, my most read authors were based off of series. So we had Darren Shan, who does the Cirque du Freak series, because I read 12 of these. They were short 200-page middle grades and I did them on audio. And then Ransom Riggs, because I did 5 of the Miss Peregrine books and 1 like novella from Miss Peregrine. So Ransom Riggs came in at number 2. And then at number 3 is Alice Feeney, because I read 5 of her books this year. I started off with Rock, Paper, Scissors, and it was my top favorite book of the year for a long time. So I decided to read like all of her adult thrillers, and I disliked almost all of them except for Daisy Darker, but I really liked the writing style and the narrator, so I just kept like trying them. So I'm still kind of on the fence on how I feel about Alice, but Rock, Paper, Scissors was great. So because of this as well, my most listened to narrators were Ralph Lister, who does the Cirque du Freak series, Kirby Hayborn, who does Miss Peregrine's, and Stephanie Rainsine, who does Alice Feeney. So Ralph Lister I did 12, Kirby I did 6, and Stephanie I did 5. I wasn't sure if some of the more eclectic books would pile up, but it was all kind of series and author specific. The average length of books I've been reading were 302. That's very low for me because I didn't hardly physically read anything over 400 pages, and almost none of my audios were over like 400 to 450 pages. So this was pretty low this year. I also read a ton of short things, like more than normal, more graphic novels. So that kind of brought the number down a little bit. I read 1 nonfiction book this year. My goal was 5, but at least I got the 1 in. The Energy Bus, I really enjoyed it. It was just kind of a good way to kick off the new year and have a new outlook on life. I read 29 middle grade, which I thought was pretty decent. That was almost 10% of my reading. And then I read 157 YA, which is pretty normal for me. The majority of the books I like to read are YA. They're just more adventurous and fun and usually have less like hard-hitting subjects, which I don't particularly love. And I read 41 adult books. I felt like I read a lot more adult than normal. These numbers might not add up. I went through and like hand counted everything. Some of them could be considered more YA than others, or more middle grade or whatnot, but this is kind of the numbers that I came to. The oldest book that I read was Adventures of Christmas Pudding by Agatha Christie. I believe this came out in 1923, so that was really cool. I didn't really read any classics this year yet again. I did good in the past, and I've read a lot of classics in my lifetime, but I really want to do this more now that I'm more caught up on finishing up my series. It gives me time to kind of focus on the classics because I love so many of them. The newest book that I read was The Kingdom of Sweets by Erica Johansson. This came out on November 28th, and I read it like a week or 2 after. I really enjoyed it overall. You'll hear me talk about it in my December wrap-up, which will come out in like a week or so stay tuned for that. So I completed 24 series this year. This includes ones that I had started previously and new ones that I started because I had done a lot of duologies and maybe 1 or 2 trilogies that I started in 2023, and then I just binged the whole thing. So that took up the majority of my reading. I counted over 1/3 of my reading was finishing up series. That was a huge chunk of my reading. So I'm really excited that next year I don't have very many series to finish that I have started. So I have a little bit more of a clean slate to kind of grab books at random. I'm so glad that I did the work to like finish these up, but it'll be more fun to not kind of have too much hanging over my head, because I do like finishing series, and I only finish the ones that I was actively enjoying. At any point when I stopped enjoying the series, for the most part, I just DNF'd the whole series. So there were ones that I decided not to finish after reading the next one, and so forth. My best reading month was March, which was kind of a surprise to me. I wasn't really sure, and I read 28 books total. So I think I read like 21 audiobooks and 8 physical, partially due to Galaxy-a-thon, which I think was my most successful readathon reading wise. I had less going on to distract me, and I just was able to get like a ton of audiobooks in, and I did some shorter ones as well, so that was exciting. Diving into readathons, my readathon that had the most participants out of the ones that I host was Mermaid Marathon, which is what happens every year to no one's surprise. Basically, all I did was just go and look at my Instagram highlights, because I have a couple for every readathon, and I just looked at the first day to see everybody's posts, because anybody that participated in the readathon via Instagram, I'm just kind of going off of this, posted a photo. So there were a lot more people that participated, not on Instagram and things as well, but from what I got from Instagram, Mermaid Marathon had the most. I think we had like 40 something people join, which was really awesome. My most liked Instagram photo was me in front of my bookshelves when I first turned them all backwards for Halloween. This was kind of surprising. I was not expecting this to be the most liked photo. This is my top 9, which of course makes sense. We've got announcements, we've got some giveaway photos, and then we have my anniversary, because everybody was really sweet and was like, happy anniversary. It's always fun to see which ones get like the most traction per se. My most popular Instagram reel, surprisingly, was my 5 books with maps on them. This one just got the most traction, probably outside of my actual like followers, which I thought was really interesting, because the picture on the front was like not anything spectacular, but this is the one that got the most views. I'm not really sure how to look at how many things get the most likes, but this one got like pushed out the most. And then my most watched video was also really surprising, was my Halloween house tour. I think that that's because this hit people outside of my natural viewers, because it appealed to people that aren't into BookTube. I'm not sure, because I didn't really get any comments from people like outside of BookTube. It could be just that you guys love Halloween as much as I do, so that was really surprising, but that was my most watched video overall. And then my most watched Bookish video was, of course, my giant unhaul, which is always the most popular and most viewed video, because we all love a good haul and a good unhaul. So that wasn't very surprising, but I was shocked that the house tour beat everything else that I posted this year, so who knows how these things work. Okay, so I think that is everything for the nerdy type of stats. We're gonna talk really quick about the goals that I set for this year and whether or not I hit them. I really haven't even looked at this list. So the first goal was to hit 200 books. First time I did this was in 2022, and I was not sure if it was something I would be able to do again. But once the year got going and the amount of short audios and short graphic novels and all of that just made it super easy. I'm not purposefully trying to read short things to hit this goal, but I like doing short things for readathons and for recommendations for people, and so it's just kind of a natural thing that's happening. I'm not like striving to hit this goal. It just kind of happening. So that one was hit. Then goal number 2 was to physically read more. I didn't really hit this because I didn't really physically read that much, but we'll see about next year. My third goal was to read 5 nonfiction books. We didn't hit this. I read 1. We'll try again later. Goal number 4 was to get my unfinished series list down to 5. I got it down to 7, and we're gonna just call that good, because I started out at like 27, 28, plus I finished ones that I started for the first time this year, and like I said, over a third of my reading was finishing up series, so we're gonna call it a win. And then my last goal was kind of a weird one. I wanted to read all of A.G. Howard's books and all of Sarah J. Maas's books, but as I started like finishing up series and realizing that was gonna take a lot longer than I had planned, I didn't want to start any new Sarah J. Maas books because that would be a new series. And then with A.G. Howard, I really love her, but she also has series, and I didn't want to start any new ones. I don't think I read anything besides Splintered last year, but she's just an author that I really enjoy, so I set kind of a random goal. Okay, you guys, so that is everything for my Bookish stats. Stay tuned because in a few hours, the second video will come out, which is my Brightside Book Awards, where I just give out silly awards for favorite character, favorite author, different things like that. So kind of statistical things, but also we're just going to talk about like my favorite things from the year, from all of the books that I read. And then stay tuned for 2024. I have a ton of videos coming out. We've got a January TBR, I've got a most anticipated, I've got the readathon dates announcement. In the second week of January, I'll have the new readathon official announcement with all the details about the challenges and everything. There is a lot of fun, exciting things coming. I hope you are having a great New Year's Eve. Have fun tonight if you're with friends and family or staying in and just cozily reading a book. I'm really excited for things to come in 2024. So I'll see you next time on The Bright Side. Thank you.